Peace, how y'all doing? My name is Nino Brown. I'm speaking to you all from Boston. I'm a fifth grade teacher and I'm a member of Reds and Ed, a new project of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So my last day of school was March 16th, my 29th birthday, and I was glad to spend it with my students. What's happening right now is with the government's response to the coronavirus being really lackluster, we see how this spills out into the education field, where we're told things that education or a public school is the cornerstone of democracy, as a way to say that schools are supposed to be the pillars of our society. But according to the Supreme Court, public education to them is, the most important function of the state and local governments, and that it serves as a foundation of good citizenship and democratic society. So I think it's important that we take a look. Why don't we take a look at these pillars? And there's so-called defenders, right? So the United States Congress, they just passed a $2 trillion assistance package that includes about $13.5 billion for public schools. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, billions of dollars, but two of the largest teachers unions, the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, and the National Education Association, the NEA, stated that they would need a minimum of $75 billion in a recent letter to Congress, just for the pandemic relief. So if education or our public schools are supposed to be some cornerstone of democracy, then what does it mean when our Democrats continue to defund it? The pandemic has exposed deepened inequalities in the U.S. capitalist system. Banks and corporations have been bailed out, while some districts are already announcing proposed budget cuts and staffing cuts. While advocating for closures, unions also insisted that the schools and districts keep providing resources for families. 51% of public school students, which is over 25 million children, qualify for free and reduced lunch. School districts in multiple states have halted providing food to students, deepening inequities and the crisis. And if we recall, right, when the economy entered into a free fall in 2008, states did nothing to defend teachers, unions, students, and families. Several states had their budgets cut, like Wisconsin, where there was pretty much war over teacher benefits, or states like North Carolina and Florida, where they cut education spending per student from $10,000 to $7,000 in just 3 years, further showing the way that the capitalist government serves as a prop for the ultra-rich. States across the country incentivize students to depart public schools and go to cheaper alternatives, charter schools and voucher programs, as a way to privatize education. But teachers have been fighting back, right? So we saw a waves of strike that Moira spoke to that halted the privatization attacks on public education. And now more than ever, teachers are mobilized. So while we do our work in our classrooms and on our school site and on our sites, we understand that a wider struggle is necessary, that we need to organize society in a way that meets the needs of our students and our families. And if you agree, you should look into Reds and Ed. So I'm also not a history teacher by profession, but I do study history. And in 2008, the capitalist government did the same thing that they're doing now, right? Bailing out the rich and socializing the losses. This has to be some type of great democracy that we live in that does this every time and time again. Obviously not. No, comrades. So these myths peddled as axioms of American culture are collapsing around us, right? Education, as Paulo Freire said, does not change the world in and of itself. It is only the masses, the people, who make change in the world. And that's what Reds and Ed sets out to do. We are teacher activists and socialist organizers from different districts across the United States who are active in our unions and at our sites. And we know our schools and communities have been devastated by decades of cutbacks and anti-union so-called reforms that have left students, schools, and educators under-resourced and under-supported. The incredible struggles waged by teachers from West Virginia to Arizona to Kentucky to California and Illinois over the last few years have built fierce opposition to continued privatization and demanded resources for our schools. It was these teacher strikes that made 2018 and 2019 the year of the strike. So Reds and Eds, we stand in solidarity with all essential workers in healthcare and agriculture, retail, culinary services, distribution, transportation, janitorial, and childcare, and more, who are working to sustain everyone's survival while organizing for safe working conditions. Education workers and their unions have been fighting for students and their families. Many public school parents are themselves essential workers, recognizing the deep connection between learning and working conditions. We are organizing in the midst of a pandemic that has deepened already existing inequalities. Naomi Klein commented on the COVID-19 and how it's affected us. She said that, she's learned a lot of things that we can count on during this time, right? That during moments of cataclysmic change, the previously unthinkable suddenly becomes a reality. So we have two paths, and we cannot step back. Our communities are on the line, and we as teachers stand in the intersection of so many communities. We have a special role here. We have to be tribunes of the people and commit to a struggle for the common good. If you're interested in learning more about Reds and Ed, you can check out our website and our program at redsanded.org. Peace, all power to the people, and thank you very much.
Historically, Reds and Eds, meaning socialists and communists in education, played a major role not only in promoting public education and better conditions for students, but also from the point of view of challenging the dominant narrative on major historical and social issues. For instance, the interpretation of the U.S. Civil War was basically taught from the slave owners' point of view between 1890 and 1935 in public schools. It was the role of socialist teachers, primarily in NYC, but elsewhere, who made the political struggle about learning U.S. history such that the counter-narrative against that of the slave owners finally began to be taught. Does the party's Reds and Eds focus exclusively on trade union issues or thinking broadly in terms of regards to curriculum?
Word, peace. So thank you for that question. Reds and Ed, we are not just fighting for trade union struggles or bread and butter issues. The bread and butter issues are important. That's how we subsist, but we really have to look beyond that. So that's part of the reason why we have a 10-point program. So our 10-point program is to pay all educators living wage, nurses, counselors, social workers, and librarians in every school, limit class size, fully fund our schools, defend our unions, end privatization of public education, prioritize educating our students, not just standardized testing, cops out of school, desegregate education, hire teachers of color, and cancel student loan debt. So these are issues that speak to the entire class, right? These are issues that speak to workers and oppressed people in this country. I would argue any country, any capitalist country. So we don't just focus on the bread and butter. We see the larger picture that education and public schools exist within a capitalist society that is the major cause, right, of the digital divide, the disparate treatment of Black students and over-policing of schools with students of color. So we see the bigger picture, so we definitely don't just fight for trade union issues. And as far as what we can do or what has already been done in terms of communists and teachers leading the anti-racist struggle within the union, in the labor movement writ large, I think we have that as a benchmark to meet. So the Communist Party in the 30s, they organized the teachers union and linked the struggle against racism to the struggle in the classroom by fighting over the ruling ideas of society, right? That Reconstruction was not some Black counter-revolution, right? That was the American Revolution, actually. That the community, the larger community of teachers have a direct fight to fight against racism. So not only did the teachers fight to teach, right, people's history, to teach history from the bottom up, what actually happened, they also fought for teachers of color, for Black teachers to be hired so they can teach their own history, right, and tell history from their own points of view. So I think the benchmark is there, and Reds and Ed, we hope to meet it and go past it, because it's really what we need right now.